Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. We are OPE. I am Iowa Joe. The Quanos are still in the Philippines. Mike texted me today saying he'll be back next week for recording. So you got to put up with me and a special guest, and that special guest is good friend, good man, handsome devil, Jason Perone. Jason, I don't even know what you're doing anymore. You tend to float around on different stuff. I know you were doing like a Monday show and a pregame show and shit like that for the longest time. What have you been up to lately?
Yeah, I got fired from 2 of those 3 gigs. So I think I fired myself from Quick Slants and the pregame show. It's been a while since I've done that one. So I'm still doing the Thursday edition of the Pack a Day podcast, and that's with my cohort, Mark Eckel, who I've been with since 2019. So it's been a good long run for the two of us. But yeah, you can find me on the Thursday edition of the Pack a Day podcast. I kind of stopped doing Quick Slants when Game On kind of slowed down a little bit. So this was a nice, refreshing change. It's always good to make my annual pilgrimage here to the Ohana Packers, and here I am.
Yep. And last year was kind of a dud one because you're more of a corners room, but old Brian Maffey beat everybody to that one. So
we think we did safeties, right?
Yep. So this year I was like, no. Jason always wants the corners. We're going to set the corners aside for Jason this year. So to hell with it. Maffey, you can bite me.
Yeah. Well, it's no wonder he doesn't talk to me anymore now. The only thing I get from him are Spaceballs memes, and it's usually the asshole one. So, all right, great.
So with that being said, I do have to ask, what are your feelings on the world getting Spaceballs 2 next year?
Oh, man. It's a national treasure. And I would assume the majority of the audience, or at least half of the audience, has never seen the original. They've only heard about it or seen clips. I'll tell you what, do yourself a favor, watch the original before you get the remake or reboot that's coming out. Now, I don't know if they're going to use the same plot and just have different actors and change it up a little bit, or if they're going to go completely different. But
everybody's coming back except for the obvious one. They've all signed up for it. Even Rick Moranis is coming back as Dark Helmet.
Wow. And he stopped acting a while ago. So that's cool.
Yeah. So the stuff that I've been seeing is I think Josh Gad is going to be there, but all the main original cast will be back.
You know who you throw in there for John Candy? Who's the obvious? Who would you put in there?
Oh, who would you put in there?
To me, it seems very obvious.
God, I wouldn't even. There's a few different ones that you could. The one that I would throw in there just for the sake of it, because he's made a living off of being the fluffy guy, would be Gabriel Iglesias, because that would just. But I don't know if you could honestly replace John Candy in anything.
No, Jack Black.
Yeah, I mean, I could see him being one of the same species, but I just don't know if you could honestly. I think the storyline is going to revolve that Josh Gad is Barf's son.
Okay.
So if anybody knows who Josh Gad is, he's kind of a bigger comedian. I think most people know his voice because he was, wasn't he like Olaf in You Got Younger
that's right.
Kids?
Yeah, he was. He was.
In what's that one called? Frozen. That's
Frozen.
It. Yeah. But that's great. It's great that they're finally getting it, although it is 40 years too late, because we definitely are going to miss John Candy in the Barf role. But I'm looking forward to it. And Mel Brooks is still alive and kicking, and he's producing the thing. So
unbelievable.
I'm looking forward to it. It's very rare that I look forward to these so late in line sequels, but this one, with them saying they're bringing everybody, well, I guess they're not going to be able to bring Joan Rivers back either. So I'm wondering how they're going to do Dot, but
they'll figure it
out. It should be fun, but that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. I just had to ask.
I signed up for the wrong show.
That might be a later on show. That might be when I do my off-season, off-topic.
Anytime. Anytime. Let's do it. Get Mafia on here and let's do it. Let's bring the whole band together.
We'll
But
allow Kawano on it too, and we'll just riff on it. But what we're here to talk about is our draft positional breakdown. Weekly, we go position by position. I tried to schedule them out by highest need to lowest need, uh, which leads us to the cornerback room, which again, Jason always tries to uh, secure every year, so we try to make it work for him. But let's go ahead and take a look at what the Packers have on roster for the cornerbacks. And really,
it's a very short conversation.
it's a very short conversation because there's not much there. There's a lot of free agents and a lot of guys that probably shouldn't be making the room next year. But we'll see. But obviously, you're going to be returning. In a good world, maybe not, but Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Nate Hobbs' contract doesn't allow him to be out of it this next season, so he's going to be back. You got to figure Kamal Hadden is going to be back because he's going to probably be an exclusive rights free agent, and that's about it.
Yep.
For the current state of the room, I mean, you've got Jalen Simpson, who they've got listed as a D-back, so he could probably float either way. And, Bo Melton is going to be that free agent. I think he was just a restricted free agent last year, so he won't be this year. He'll be just a unrestricted free agent this year. So they're
what I see on Bo is that he's still restricted.
okay. Well,
I don't know. I would have thought he would have had enough years too, but I'm looking at
maybe
his
last year he was exclusive rights.
Exclusive rights, yes, correct.
Okay, so if he was exclusive rights last year, then he does have his
RFA.
restriction this year.
Yeah.
But, for all the talk of the offseason last year about him making the transition to cornerback, we didn't see him play outside of the preseason as a cornerback. So who knows how that's going to be. And again, that's about it for the room. I mean, there's a couple on the like Tyron Herring, and actually that's it on the practice squad. So they're whatchamacallit, the futures contracts are very sparse on that. They already released Diggs from his contract, but there's a possibility he could re-sign anyway because he's like Micah Parsons' best friend. So, make Micah happy, bring him back on a decent contract or, a team-friendly contract. And, at least he would provide depth. But what are your feelings in the current state of things of the Packers roster?
It's barren. Corner's barren. And coming into last year, before we knew what Nate Hobbs was going to be, and I was actually pretty excited about him during training camp because he was active and flying around. He was hitting guys. I know it was problematic because the coaches had to kind of tamp him down a little bit. But, Andy Herman, our overlord over Pack a Day podcast, was like, man, all the media that were covering the team were talking about how we're going to love this player come week 4, week 5 when everybody's all juiced up and ready to go. They get all the rust knocked off because he's going to be a really active and passionate player, but it just didn't come to fruition. He had injuries and never really got a chance to play on the inside too much. They talked about him being better in the slot, but the problem is that you saw kind of a breakout year from Javon Bullard. And so that's your star right there. You're not going to take him off the field in the slot. And that leaves 2 outside spots for 3 guys, Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, and Nate Hobbs. Now, going into last year, my hope was that they would put Hobbs and Valentine on the outside and Bullard in the slot and have Keyshawn come off the bench. I've never really bought into him as a corner. And I think he kind of showed us why during the postseason. I mean, he had the big game-sealing catch against the Bears that in the last game the Packers would end up winning this season is crazy, Joe. December 7th. And they lost their last 5 games. And Keyshawn Nixon just didn't do a whole lot. So this positional group, and obviously one of the reasons why I wanted this position group again this year is because Goody's going to attack this. You just can't. I mean, looking at this roster, like you said, Shamar Bartholomew, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Jalen Simpson. Those are the only guys on the active roster. Kamal Haddon and Nate Hobbs are listed as injured reserve. Haddon's going to be out for a while. His injury looked pretty bad, and that happened at the end of the season. Hobbs, I think, will be okay, but I don't know how much we can really count on him to produce coming
I
into
think
next year.
I think his IR was just procedural, though. They only had the one game, or they put him on IR where he could be brought back if they made it run into the playoffs. So I think his was more just procedural. But yeah,
And Trayvon Diggs, I mean, keep an eye on him and see if he wants to come play in Green Bay on a decent contract. I don't know. He's going to be. I think he's kind of got out. Is the guy is going to be out there for a while, kind of written all over him. I don't think he's going to all of a sudden be a day one. I mean, nobody claimed him. Green Bay was the only team that claimed him. And interestingly enough, $500,000 for him to play what, a handful of snaps against the Vikings,
one snap.
and one against the Bears.
Yeah.
In the playoffs. Yeah. And that was it. So, yeah, they need some help. Goody's definitely going to attack this. I think you'll see his typical formula, which is sign one, draft two, right? Or sign two, draft one. What do you think?
What's going to hurt is draft capital. And I don't, we've had this, on the podcast have had this conversation for a long time. We're not going to poo-poo the trading for Micah Parsons, because with what Goody was able to do to get Parsons in here was amazing.
Yeah.
I think anybody in the world would have made that trade every day of the week. But with that being said, that limits what you can do in the draft, because whereas you could have traded back with that first round and picked up more picks in the rounds, or that one guy could be there in the first round, now you've got to fill a bunch of holes with limited space. And we also know how the Packers like to draft a year ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that also limits things too, because now it's okay. And I put this up to Jacob Westendorf last week. Do you think, because we all know how the Packers do their first round picks. Usually it's a younger guy, high upside, freakish athlete, say whatever you want, but that's usually what they do with the first round. And then, the later rounds are usually crapshoots on what they do. Do they, slide everything down to second round now, where the second round pick is going to be, freak athlete, high upside, young guy? Or do they go with somebody that could step in day one if they're there? So what are your feelings on how they're going to look at the draft with limited space?
Well, if you look at Matthew Golden, for example, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, Jordan Love. Jordan Love, a different situation. Aaron Rodgers was still very good. Rookies don't play in Green Bay. They don't throw them out there. So, but Goody also has to understand here that coming into this season, and again, I'm coming at it from my own lens here. This is, believe it or not, for my age, this is the longest drought that I have endured as a Packers fan without a Super Bowl appearance. So,
yeah.
And I'm starting to get to the point now where I believe this team can certainly compete. I mean, you could argue that even if the only acquisition this team makes is everybody comes back healthy next year, Kraft, Parsons, everybody comes back, even if they lose a bunch of guys in free agency, but if they get their key guys healthy, they can still be very good. But Goody's going to have to change it up here. He's going to have to understand, I get that you can't just, throw the dart and get it right in the second round and find a corner that can come in and play right away. That's why I think what you'll likely see is Carrington Valentine. We could talk about him after this, because I have an entire thought on Carrington. But I think between Hobbs and Keyshawn, one of those two guys will be out there on the outside. And I think Goody will sign somebody to come in and play. He's not going to want to draft that second rounder. That second rounder just turns into Jair Alexander in training camp, then sure, you put him out there. But it's like you said, I think you alluded to it too. It's not really their formula. It's not very likely. And Goody could also surprise us. And I did say draft 2. They have 6 picks, right? If not more coming with the compensatory. We haven't figured out how many of those they're going to get, right? So they're probably going to have 7 or 8 swipes in this draft, right? They just don't have a 1. Those corners may not end up coming until round 4, 5, 6 because they also need some more depth on the defensive line. And we know they need some more depth. They need offensive line depth too. So who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? But I would just say don't count on the draft being where they find their starting corners. I think between who they have right now, which again is a very bare cupboard, and free agency, I think that's what will be the key.
Currently, they have 8
picks
because they've got 3 7th rounders and then 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, the Packers have done well with some of their late round picks. Rasheed Walker, 7th round. Donald Driver, this wasn't Brian Gutekunst, but years ago, Donald Driver, 7th round pick. I mean, they've found some nice gems. I mean, Zach Tom was a 4th or 5th rounder, right? So
I think he was a 5th round.
Sure.
I think.
Sure.
I'd have to look, but
Goody found Rasul Douglas on the Arizona Cardinals scrap heap.
And that's where things were kind of weird last year, that you didn't see more of that stuff happening. It was like they only wanted to roll with the 3 guys that they had until injuries started mounting. And of course, with the changeover in defensive staff, is that philosophy going to change? We know Gannon is more of a corner guy too. So this is my hope. And all these simulators that I run, I try to see if it make it happen. With as much as Jeff Hafley seemed to love Keyshawn Nixon, I'm hoping they can send Nixon down to Miami for a pick. Because he'd be, he's only got 1 more year on his contract. He's got, and it's a decent, or it's a palatable contract. So it's not like it's a Diggs contract or something like that where they're going to be taking on $15 million or whatever. It's a very low contract number. I'm like you when it comes to Nixon. I could never understand the hype on him. Even when Jair was healthy and was still on the team, I could never see Nixon out there as more than just I saw him as a Jarrett Bush. You didn't want him out there more than you absolutely had to have him out there. Yes, he was going to make a play here or there, but he was going to be your special teams guy, whether it was a return guy or gunner or whatever it was. But then when he started talking, well, I want to be number 1 corner on a team, that kind of was like, no, buddy. I mean, I get it. You've got to hype yourself up. You've got to go out there and talk like that, but you're not showing it on the field. And I know he's going to have the flashy stuff where, yes, he was finally picked for the Pro Bowl at corner this year, even though it was after somebody else dropped out. And, he had, 11 pass defenses or 14 pass defenses or whatever. But it was more like he got lucky because he was just in the right place at the right time for it. And, Carrington, I love Carrington to death, and he's a great cover guy. He just can't tackle.
And I don't even know if he can cover that well either. He definitely couldn't tackle, and his coverage. The awareness with Carrington is interesting to me because in 23, he looked like a guy who's like, okay, if he's playing like this as a rookie, speaking of rookies having to be thrown in there, right?
Right.
He had that big play on MVS to seal the Chiefs game on Sunday Night Football, right? And like, if he's playing like this as a rookie, like this kid's gonna flash. Like he's gonna become somebody. He could be another Tramon Williams. Tramon was an undrafted free agent, if I'm not mistaken, right back in the day. Just didn't happen. And the thing with Carrington too is like there were a couple times where it was like, dude, just turn your head. The ball's coming right at you. Catch it. Then he finally catches in the playoff game. He catches and makes an interception on a 4th down play where it's like if you just drop it, you get, it was only like 15 or 20 yards, but on that one, it's like that one you don't want to catch. You want to drop his 4th down, right? Caleb threw him a gift. I mean, maybe he had an escalator in his contract. I have no idea, but yeah, he's disappointed. Keyshawn Nixon, I think the Packers gave him the indication last offseason that, hey, you're gonna be one of our corners, because he kept talking in the offseason last year. CB1 doesn't return kicks, and almost talking about himself in the third person. So, and it was corner was that position that Goody just could not address in a major way. I mean, Nate Hobbs was a pretty major acquisition because of the money that they paid to him. I think they probably regret the deal that they gave him. They paid him a lot of money. So, like you said, I think it's more likely than not that he's back. But if he's back and he's healthy and he's played in the right way, fine. You've got some experience in the cornerback room. One thing Mark Eckel, my co-host over at Pack-A-Day, has said for a long time, and I don't know how you feel about it. You're probably similar to me, even though we haven't talked about this before, but this youngest team in the league thing is fine. But Mark says the Packers need more grown-ups in the room. And I think there's certain positions where you really do need that experience. Like, I think pass rusher, quarterback, obviously, the maturity and the leadership there. I think corner is also one of those, but I'm also maybe being prisoner of the moment, Joe, where it's like, well, we had Charles Woodson for a long time. So, I mean, we're always going to be longing for that, right?
I have no problems with and I get what you guys are saying. And Westendorf kind of said it last week when he said that they could use a Khalil Mack type player or something like that, somebody chasing a ring or whatever. But I don't see it as they need more veteran types. I would like to see them get more mouthy types, because I'm getting tired of the.
Sure.
I kind of pointed this out when during the Broncos game and the Bears game, and I know other people have too. When Jordan got hit, where was his line at?
Oh man, yeah.
Or when this is happening on defense, where were the other players at? Or stuff like that where there's no. And Mike Daniels has been on the he had that interview with Jimmy Christensen a couple weeks ago, and has said, and he's even said that before the interview, that there's no punch in the mouth mentality with this team. And is it an organizational thing? Is it a coach thing? Because he even said that he was being held down when he was in Green Bay, because that's the type of person he is. But when he moved to Detroit or when he moved to Cincinnati, he wasn't even the loudest guy on the roster at that point. So I would like to see more of that. I see Micah being a little bit more like that, because you can hear him in his press conferences and stuff, talking more. But I want to see it on the field. That's where I kind of miss Jair, because Jair was kind of like that. But I think that's what the Packers are missing a little bit more, is that guy that is going to run his mouth but can back it up too.
You want some dog.
I do. I want some dog. And there's really nobody on the team they're all quote unquote silent leaders. They're not the guys that are going to give that passionate halftime speech and, what the hell are we doing out there? Let's, get out there, kick their asses and stuff like that. So if that has to come with somebody who is more of a veteran guy, fine. Like I said, Westendorf mentioned maybe Khalil Mack being somebody who's chasing a ring that can step in. Great. Maybe Diggs can come back on a decent deal and be that guy. Great. Even though he's still, he's like 27 or something like that, right?
Yeah,
28.
so young. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust me, I was just ripping not ripping, but I was giving Terrence Parsons a hard time because he was just posted on Twitter yesterday that he was turning 31. I said, "Oh, shut up! I'm going to be 40 this year." So the age thing, really, it's getting to the point where I'm getting to be the same age as coaches on the team more than I am the players on the team.
How do you think I feel? I mean, I remember watching Lindy Infante coach this team on TV. So
yeah, I was just under that level.
So that's why when I said, like, this is the longest drought for Super Bowl drought that for me as a Packers fan, that I kind of felt like that should resonate, because I've obviously watched a lot of Packers football over the years. And fortunately, I was spared most of the 80s and the 70s, which were awful.
Right, right.
So I didn't go through that whole thing, but yeah, I mean, these iterations of the Packers teams, it is kind of interesting. They've had a lot of success, but they do have, they do seem to have a type of player that they like. They try to avoid players who cause problems, and that's the one thing I'm very grateful for is that you don't hear the Packers in the news for the wrong reasons typically because of the crazy stuff that goes on, but it is football, and you do need a little bit of crazy if you're playing football to be good at it, to be confident, and you got to have some arrogance out there too. Jair was really good at it because he could talk, but he played well and also
Yeah.
didn't get penalized. I mean, you look at Keyshawn, you say like, okay, Keyshawn definitely has that dog in him, right? So he can be kind of that enforcer, is what I think another word I would use for what you're looking
Right.
for there. In hockey, you've got the enforcer, right? But the problem with Keyshawn is that if you don't give him the guidelines or if you let him go too far, then there's yellow laundry all over the field. And I'm not talking about that terrible call in the first Packers Bears game where Luther Burden's got his hand around Keyshawn's neck and
Yeah,
Keyshawn's getting
yeah.
flagged, right? So yeah, you definitely need that attitude. But let me ask you this. I have a question.
Okay.
Why
42.
oh, that's it. That's the answer. 42. When you have guys like X and Evan Williams now and Bullard, right? I know that Jair's gone. You have Keyshawn. They have guys that can be like that. Like, is it the coaching staff that's holding them back? I mean, listen, Matt LaFleur says, I almost said Mike. Now it's like they got two LaFleurs in the league, and Mike's right here in my backyard in Phoenix. So, but Matt doesn't seem to be the type where he's like, no, I don't tell the players like how to act or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I could see him being okay with that because it's not so much his persona to be
I
that way and let his players do that. But I mean, why aren't they? They have guys, they're just not doing it.
I'm wondering if it's organizational more than it is coaching. Because you look at Mark Murphy, and he was really kind of the laid back, quiet leader type. He would pop off one or two things once in a while, but that would get a chuckle or something out of people. But he was more the casual. And then you look at Ted Thompson, who was straight laced as straight laced could be. And
Sure.
I remember I used to be on a forum that's now defunct, and there was a guy that I trusted heavily with a lot of his evaluations because I mean this guy was amazing when it came to draft stuff. And he said, if you're really wanting to know what the Packers are going to do in the draft or who they would have interest in, look at who they talk to at interviews and then go check out their social medias, because one of the first things that you're going to see in their social media is something about religion, whether it's a Bible verse or God is great or something like that. And that'll usually be the guy who ends up in Green Bay. And honestly, under Ted Thompson, that was true, because if you go back and look at it, a lot of those guys they talked to him in interviews, and then they had something about, and this isn't to denigrate religion, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying that was the type of guy that Ted Thompson looked for.
Sure.
So that makes me wonder if that was kind of an organizational thing that, okay, well, we don't want these guys that are going to go out there and bark everything. We want these guys to be pillar of the community, idols, not idols, but role models that the kids can look up to, and stuff like that. And the one thing that makes me wonder if it's not the coaching is because when Matt LaFleur first signed on as the Packers head coach, I remember being up in Green Bay for training camp that year when they were doing the what do they call them, where the Texans came in.
Joint
And
practice, yeah.
joint practices. Why I couldn't think of that for some reason. I was thinking split practices.
Oh, that was a rough one. Somebody got hurt in that one. I think
Right.
Sternberger.
Yes. Lonnie Johnson took out Sternberger, and LaFleur was the first one in that scrum. And what made it even better was that was the same time that he had just torn his Achilles playing basketball. So he was in a walking boot.
Yeah.
And he was in the middle of the scrum, and my grandpa was still alive, and I went back and was visiting with him at that point. He goes, well, what do you think of this new coach? I said, Grandpa, I think this could be the closest to a Vince Lombardi type guy that you could currently have. He goes, what do you mean? I said, because he's very vocal. He's not going to let anybody get away with anything. And he knows what the hell he's doing. Well, now we're 7 years later,
Yep.
and things have just kind of went the opposite way with him, to the point where, he's very coach speak in his press conferences. He, you see him get rowdy on the sideline once in a while when something happens, but you don't see that fire in him anymore. So that makes me again wonder if it was a organizational thing saying, hey, we want you to temper it down and be this. So with all that being said, I'm wondering, with Ed Policy now in charge, if we could see kind of a drastic change with things happening.
Could be. I don't know. I don't know how much I think there's been a change in LaFleur, but we're body language police right now, which is fine.
Right.
It's all we go off of, right? Because he's going to coach speak and we don't know what is exactly in his head. I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and I think this Packer Squad show is a good one. Peter Bukowski, and he has Jeff Jagodzinski, former Packers
I
offensive
don't listen to
coordinator from.
Bukowski. Me and him got into it a few years ago. So
Well, Coach Jags. So Coach Jags used to be with on one of Mike McCarthy's staffs, and
yeah,
I think he was a Packers coach before under Mike Sherman. If I'm
could have been, yeah.
And his theory is he's like, listen, Matt LaFleur, I guarantee you the things that he says to his team in the locker room when the cameras aren't rolling is different than what you see on TV. So he has that in him. He just doesn't choose to portray it necessarily to us. I look at him in moments, and when things don't go well, especially offensively, because he's calling plays.
Right.
When things don't go well, he's just kind of, he's got that disappointed look on his face, but it's like, you're the general now. Like, you're the head coach. You're calling plays, but you still have the defensive side of the ball. And Joe Barry was kind of the same way. Joe Barry would be up in the booth, somebody would do something, and he almost looked like a parent attending like a Pop Warner game, and I'm just like, again, we're body language police, the whole situation. Like, we want a Mike Holmgren. We want somebody that is the alpha in that locker room.
Yeah.
When he's talking, people are listening, right? I have my own questions about Matt LaFleur, but we have to assume that he is bringing Jonathan Gannon in here to be the CEO of the defense. And I do think I used to kind of not be as big of a fan of bringing in a former head coach to be a coordinator. But I do think there's some value there, because we all have sat here and said, man, Matt LaFleur needs like somebody
experience
to X, Y, and Z during the games, right? And so maybe John Gannon can be that. Now, Jonathan Gannon is quirky and he's got a little weird to him, but if you're going to coach my defense, I almost like that.
Well, and he did get fined for slapping one of his own players last year. So
that's right. Yeah, I mean, listen, working for the Cardinals will do that to you, but
but anyway, that's not what we're here to. That could be a whole nother podcast, and it's something that Mike and I have been over the last couple of years with LaFleur, and Mike has been well known on record for not being a big fan of LaFleur of the last few years, but it is definitely going to be interesting to see what Gannon does do, because again, he's another one that is more of a defensive back type coach with a specialty in corners. So it'll be interesting to see how he wants to mold that room with, I kind of laugh because I didn't realize it, but he's like been photobombing me this whole time, how Gannon works with Goody in molding that defensive back room, because there is a lot of change that needs to happen. So let's go ahead and look at maybe some free agents that could step in and even if it's just, like you said, bring in one that can be a quality starter while your 1 or 2 draft picks are being, God, I'm forgetting my words. Brought along slowly.
Groomed, yeah.
Groomed. I was thinking groomed, but there's another specific word that I always forget that damn word. But So obviously the first one is bringing back Trayvon Diggs, who could be a quality starter, depending on if he wants to come back on a short-term deal, or whatever. Obviously he's not going to get that big, 4-year, $15 million a year contract with Green Bay. If they were, they would have just kept him on it at his current contract. I'm surprised they cut him as early as they did because of they didn't owe him anything if they cut him. So I thought they would roll all the way through the draft to see how things panned out, but that does clear 15 million off of their already slim cap. That it is what it is. But Jason, is there anybody in free agency that you think the Packers could honestly bring in as a quality starter, maybe a veteran guy to help out with a young group?
I would love to see what Diggs still has in the tank.
Yeah.
And he spent for whatever it's worth. I know it was only 2 or 3 weeks, but the Micah connection and you give him a chance to resurrect his career. Yeah, I would love to see it. I don't know what kind of interest he's garnering. I think he might be the best of all worlds where he wants to be in Green Bay with Micah and nobody else is really making him an offer, which means Green Bay can get him on a pretty good value. So, but you don't have to necessarily stop there.
Right.
I there was a lot of talk about Tariq Woolen, and the reason I understand why. When players go deep into the playoffs, they get a lot of run. They're on TV, they're in front of your face. So Seattle Seahawks cornerback Tariq Woolen is one of the top free agent corners that's going to be out there. The high variance there on him, and I don't know, and these names that I'm saying too, I'll be really honest with you, I haven't double checked their size profile because I know the
Is
Packers
Woolen
have
a free
certain.
agent, or do they have to release him first?
He will be a free agent.
Because I don't see him on
Yeah.
Sport Track. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. So, um, I've heard his name mentioned, and he's listed here. Let me see. Jalen Watson is another one, and Jamel Dean. Do you see any of those guys?
Yeah, I see Dean.
Dean's another one that I like, but I think he's getting up there in years. I think he's probably close to, if not
He's
30.
29. Yeah.
And Goody typically doesn't like to, he wants guys that are a little bit young, but again, adult in the room. He's got experience. He's dependable. I think there's certain guys that I think you could just put in any defense, and they've played enough football in their life that even if they don't know what the play call is, they could probably still do something because they just know how to play ball.
Okay, I found
I think
Woolen.
I,
It just means I have to go to the next page, and I didn't go to the next page.
I think Dean could absolutely, but I will say this: I think Jamel Dean is also he's probably going to be one of the more sought after guys because not every team takes the same approach that the Packers do. There are teams that want that experience. They're willing to pay for that and say, hey, you're 29, you got at least 2 or 3 years. We'll do 2 years in a void year or 2 void years, and do whatever it is that we need to do. So Dean would be great. Woolen, I'm not as huge of a fan on.
I
Of
think he's about like a Diggs type, that he's had a few down years.
Well, here's another one. Eric Stokes had a great season in Las. I keep hearing about this great season that Eric Stokes had in Las Vegas, right? But I think maybe he had to go to Vegas to be good and get out of Green Bay and just be in a different environment. If you bring him back, he obviously would need to stay healthy. I don't know. What are your thoughts about bringing Stokes back? Stokes.
I never
Version
thought
2.
he should have been let go,
Okay.
honestly, because when he was seeing the field, I know a lot of people were poo pooing on him, but I thought he was playing better than Keyshawn,
Well, he's
which
better than
isn't
Carrington. He's better than Carrington Valentine is really the way I see it.
right. And he's still only going to be. It has him as 26.9, so that must be close to
27. Yeah, he's young.
27.
Oh, he's young. Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't be against it, but the whole thing is, would he want to come back?
Why didn't Vegas, if he had such a good season, why wouldn't Vegas bring him back?
Because Vegas is in so shitty of a situation that who wants to be in
Well, they're going to
Vegas?
trade Max Crosby and and all that money along with him. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
they'll
not even a money thing. It's that they've been such a crap organization for so long that
yeah.
not many people want to stay in with the Raiders. So I could see that, because you got to remember, it's like everybody else has to remember that it's not a one side thing. It's not, if a team wants you back, then you automatically have to go back. No, they can make a decision on whether or not they want to resign or not. And he could have just simply said, I didn't like my time here. Yeah, I had a good year, but I didn't like being in Vegas. I just want to get out of here.
So let me
So
figure out what else is going on. I mentioned Jalen Watson. He's another one too, and he's got Super Bowl pedigree.
I
So if you're going to attack, if Goody's going to do the sign 2 draft 1, I would like to think that Jalen Watson, Jamel Dean, one of those two guys is on his radar.
see. I've
I hope.
got one on my radar that the market value for him is not as high as a Jamal Dean, according to Sport Track, anyway. But it's still a solid contract, and that's Greg Newsome. And the reason I bring him up is because the Packers were linked to him for a couple of years in trades, so that there's possibly a connection there where they would like to bring him in. He's only 25 years old. He's not been great, but he's been quality.
Mhm.
And again, that could be somebody who they could bring in as a quality, just give him a 3-year contract that still puts him 28 when that contract is up. So if he's redeemed himself, he can go out and get one last big money contract. And hopefully by then, whatever draft picks that the Packers have made at the position, they can hopefully take over at that point. I keep hearing Rasul Douglas. Well, he's 31. He played better in Miami, but when he was with Buffalo, he was pretty burnt to the crisp. Uh, you've got Cam Taylor Britt, who is another one that was linked to the Packers in trade talks, but his AAV is going to be a little bit high. Could you possibly re-look at Asante Samuel Jr.?
So you already have one corner that can't tackle. Is my take on Samuel.
But this one is a little bit better when it comes to coverage.
Yeah, that's true. If you're not going to tackle, then you better cover like Dion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, like I've said before with other people, there's a lot of who's on the list. I mean, Akilo Witherspoon, Chidobe Awuzie, Jalen Mills, Fabian Moreau. These were a lot of guys that I remember looking at in those drafts and being like, yeah, I want that guy on the team. But now they've got some age on them. It's like, no, I don't want him no more.
Yeah.
But and with as many of them out there, there's going to be a couple that are going to sign cheaper deals in hopes that they can get that bigger money later on. So that's why I said Newsome. 25 now, you give him a 3-year deal that puts him at about 28 when that deal is up. That still allows him to get one more big bag contract before theoretically he would have to be retired. There's Benjamin St. Just, who is still who's out there, had some solid years, but not like over the top. Alontae Taylor was another one the Packers were linked to in trade talks. Let's see. Cordell Float is like 24 years old, and Sport Track has his AAV at 9.5 billion. So, that would be a decent contract for a 24-year-old kid to come in for 4 years. That puts him at 28, and again, would give him a chance to go out and get another big money deal before, he hits a wall. So there are guys out there. It's just like you kind of said, what is Goody gonna want to go for? Is he gonna want to bring in, obviously he's gonna need a boundary guy. So he's gonna need to find somebody who wants to play on the boundary, who's gonna be a solid coverage guy. And I think there has to be knowledge there that you're only going to get a one contract with Green Bay, because theoretically they're also going to be drafting one or two guys this year and possibly next year. And we're going to hope those guys come along. That way, when your one contract is up, they'll be able to step in and take over. So that's something people have got to look at too.
So the draft situation for you think is a 2-year quest here. It's this year, next year, and maybe that becomes a position where it's like, hey, let's take a guy each year. Because the other thing you have to take into consideration is if they're going to draft, and I'm assuming we're going to talk about that
Yep,
here
yep.
too, right? The corners in the draft. What kind of special teams contribution can you get from those players? Because some of these guys that we talked about in free agency, I don't know that you're going to get any special team
No,
snaps out of them,
no.
right? So,
And the hope is that you're gonna, because like you stated earlier, when you look at the Packers track record when it comes to the draft, they don't start right away unless they have to. So theoretically, if you sign one of these guys in free agency, they're going to be the starter, and that guy you drafted is going to be special teams slash
mhm.
depth until he can overtake that starter. And so, but I'm on the boat that with the way corners are, and kind of with as hard as it is to get quality starters at the cornerback position, I'd draft one every year. Whether it was, if it the Packers were kind of doing that too. They took Carrington in the 7th round, almost 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Then they took Kalen King, and then this year it was Micah Robinson. So they were kind of doing that anyway. But when it comes to 6th and 7th round picks, it's like I'm going to throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And so far, the only one that's really stuck has been Carrington Valentine, and that. So it's time to reach up a little bit earlier in the draft and grab somebody who could probably be more of a quality guy than a late round. Hope it happens. So we can go ahead and jump into the draft. So obviously we've got, unless there's anything else you want to talk about on the free agent side of things.
I don't think so. I think they're more likely to add 2 in the draft and maybe sign 1. So the draft is probably a good place to take a look at.
So like I said earlier, the Packers have 8 picks as of right now. They still have a lot of the uh, comp stuff that has to come out. So we know that they're not going to get as many comp picks because they did give the 2 big money contracts to Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks. So whatever comp picks they're going to get, you're not going to see a 3rd round pick. You're not going to see a 4th round pick. Most likely, you'll see either a 6th or a 7th. I do have to laugh though. The Packers, as of right now, have the Tom Brady pick and the Mr. Irrelevant pick. So they have 199 in the 6th round, and they have the very last pick in the NFL draft. Which I
Okay.
wish they would have done that while they had the draft in Green Bay, because that guy would have made. Like I said about Michael Golden being the first wide receiver taken in the 1st round in 23 years, the guy that was picked last in the draft would have been another. The Green Bay fans would have made him a star.
Yeah.
Whether he would have played well or not, he would have been a star. But obviously, first pick the Packers have is round 2, number 52 overall. We're assuming they're there at that point. Whether they may trade up a little bit, they may trade down. Who knows what happened? But as of right now, they're number 52. With the current guys that are available in the draft, and theoretically in the 2nd round, there are going to be some top guys that are taken 1st round. So unless there's another bong gas mask video that pops out there, or
Hey,
uh
he is still playing strong, playing tackle in the NFL. So
and probably has a whole closet full of those damn
I'm
contraptions.
sure he does. Yeah.
But who would you like the Packers to take a look at 52 in the 2nd round?
Keith Abney the second. Call it a day. Turn in the
Arizona
pick.
State.
Wrap it up. Head on home. But honestly, I will say it's going to be a matter of who's going to be there. I mean, I think
Right.
Delane is kind of almost like your consensus first overall. Like he's not first overall, but he'll be the first corner taken out of LSU. He's a senior. He's played well. He's got years of playing ball. A lot of these guys are juniors. So McCoy, Terrell, Abney is almost right in that perfect spot where he's projected to go. He's 6 feet 190. He definitely hits the threshold, I think, for the Packers. So he could absolutely be a great pick for them too. And then I don't know if if they're going to try to draft a returner or if they're going to look for a 2-1, because a lot of corners end up being punt returners, right? Or kick returners. Probably more punt
I've
returners.
already fixed their kick return.
Keyshawn Nixon, right? Yeah.
No. Caden Weegan from Iowa.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, listen, the Iowa boys, they're in Iowa all the time. You know, it seems like a pretty foregone conclusion that they're gonna bring in an Iowa guy at some point. But all joking aside, I do think Abney would be a really good look in Green Bay, and he would be able to get out there and play on the outside. Now, again, if you're going to draft a guy in the second round, you're probably going to try to give him some opportunities and give him a chance to play and maybe grab a spot. And that is corner's one of the toughest positions to transition into the NFL from
Yeah.
college. So guys don't typically play well. In fact, I don't remember Jair lighting the world on fire in his rookie season. So, and he wasn't a starter right away. He did get out there, and that was under McCarthy. But you know that was Goody's very first ever draft pick was a cornerback. So I think you could do a lot worse than an Abney, but another guy too. Now the problem with this guy is his size, because he's a smaller corner. But if you want somebody who played in a big time game, you've got D'Angelo Pons, who played for
Yeah.
Indiana in the championship game. Now he's only 5'9", 175. So I don't know how well that bodes for him playing corner in the NFL, or if there's anything else he can do. I mean, he might end up being a pure kick returner if he does end up coming into the league. Maybe that's what they lean on, whoever drafts him. But I don't know what your thoughts are. Who you got your eye on?
Pond has been thrown around in a lot of the group chats that I'm a part of, but he definitely is not on the Packers scale, because we all know what the Packers typically go for with their corners. They have to be at least over 5'10. They have to at least be over 185. And, right there's two negatives on Pond to start with. But he is good in coverage. The one thing that I was trying to look at a lot when it came to cornerbacks is, can they tackle? Because I'm getting tired of these corners on the Packers not being able to tackle or not being willing to tackle and stuff like that. And for being the size he is, D'Angelo Pond is a guy that is willing to tackle. But because he is 5'9", because he is 175, is he going to be able to hold up being able to tackle some of the guys that are in the NFL right now? We all saw what happened with Jair when he tried to take on Najee Harris against Pittsburgh a few years back. It didn't go well, and that's the type of player that D'Angelo Pond is going to have to face if he's playing, outside on the run. And so is he going to be able to hold up to that? He can obviously put on more weight, but unless you give him like Miracle Grow or something like that, he's not going to put on any more in the height. So
Sure.
you've got to, and then you've got to look at him. Is he going to be able to pack on the pounds that he needs and still be able to be athletic as he is, or is that going to slow him down? So, I mean, I like Pond as a college guy, but it's just it's a big question on what he's going to be able to do in the NFL with his size. So there's a couple of guys that were brought up to me as probably more of the pure tackler or better tacklers of the group. Chris Johnson and
Yep.
Julian Neal.
Yep.
Chris Johnson is going to be one of those guys that is fringe first round, fringe second round. So is he going to make it to Green Bay? I don't know. I put this disclaimer out there before every episode. I don't try to put round grades on guys because it's so hard to do. So I just try to throw names out there that I kind of like that are mentioned in rankings. Then you've got guys that are probably going to be more your second round, Malik Muhammad and Julian Neal. The big question mark I had with Neal is the system he played in. It was so hard. It looks similar to what Iowa does, and Iowa plays a lot of zone coverage. and that makes it harder to see what they can do in man coverage. And usually, when you come from a zone heavy defense, it's hard for you to adjust back into a man coverage defense because you're not used to it. You've got to do a lot of different things when it comes to man coverage than you do when it's zone coverage. You don't pass off a guy in man coverage. You've got to stick with your guy like like your fly paper. And some guys just can't do that. So that was my knock on Neal, is I didn't get to see him in a lot of man coverage, but what I could see of him in coverage period, he looked pretty decent with it. Malik Muhammad is another one that I liked what I saw, but he needs to put on a little bit of weight. I think he was only listed like 185. So, he's to is he going to be able to put on the weight and be able to hit the 195-ish mark and still keep his ability? I see he looked a little bit stiff in his hip flip, which is, back pedal, flip to run. Um, he, my note here says he's a better tackler than what's currently on the Packers roster. So,
Which,
it's
what is
an
that really
automatic.
saying?
I did kind of question his speed a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious what he does at the combine, and it's not to say he was slow. It just, he could have been going against a guy that runs a 4.3 and he's only a 4.4 guy, but 4.4 is going to be a top notch guy anyway. He tracks the ball well in coverage, and I said he could be out physicaled once in a while. That wide receiver could run up on him and throw a punch into him, and that kind of throws him off his game. But those are a few of the guys that I really think of as top of your second round, mid second round guys. Um, the one that I really like, that according to this ranking could be a second round guy that could be there when Packers pick, that really fits all the marks the Packers like. But from what I'm being told by some of my more vested draft followers, he's got an extensive uh, injury history. That's Devin Moore out of Florida.
Okay.
He's listed 6'3", 198. The guy was a sure tackler. I mean, this was a guy that was wrapping up takedown, wasn't afraid of the contact. He let me pull my notes here for a minute. Good man coverage, smooth back pedal, tall, good speed, keeps receiver in front of him. There's nobody going deep on him because he's the way it looks with his speed, he's faster than most people on the field. So, he can make sure that wide receiver is always in front of him and then he's got the speed and quickness to drive forward. But if he's got that extensive injury history, is he going to be able to stay on the field? Is that something the Packers are going to want to look at? So, that would be my guy right now if he was there and he could pass all the medicals, and you could guarantee me at least 2 out of 4 years with him. I would be happy with it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a decent stable of corners. They're going to have to attack this position earlier than not.
Yeah.
And I don't know that necessarily means, I mean, they took Golden 1, Savion in round 3. So I don't know that they would do a 2 and 3. They could do it like a 2 and 4 because they probably want somebody up front. They need some beef up front.
They do, but I think there's some guys in the later rounds that they could get that fill in.
There are. I mean, Traden Stukes, the only issue, the only downside to him is he chose to play his college ball at Arizona, but I can forgive him for that. I mean, he's a senior, so he's probably a little bit older, but 6'2", 200 pounds. He already has that weight. It's not like he would have to put on a ton of weight. He could come in and play right away. I just, get me football players in Green Bay. Get me football players. I don't care so much anymore if they're old or younger or whatever. And what I mean by that for your audience, because I know that, I only come on once in a while, but I think that's, like you said, the attitude and this just being able to go out there and play. Sometimes these guys are so rigid that, I mean, I'll use Quay Walker as an example. You know, when he has to think too much, you can tell
Yep.
because he's not playing as well. If you turn him loose and just let him do the thing, or hey, just chase the ball carrier. Your only job is to stop the ball carrier. Ball carrier's dead to rights because he's gonna get to the corner. He's gonna stop him. But the Packers just need more. They need more guys like, okay, we get it. You're good at finding these upstanding, high character, like you said, praise God, choir boys that are smart. And you
Yep.
do need to be smart if you want to play in the NFL. You've got to have some intelligence, but it's also a very gritty sport. And if you look at just on the defensive side of the ball, the last 5 Super Bowl winners, most of those defenses had a swagger and an attitude to them. So I think it's time to find some guys that can come in and like you said, get a little chirpy,
Yeah.
get jump in and pick up the vibe that I think is already going to be in the locker room. I mean, the nice thing about Micah is one of the first things he said after the season was, we got to get in shape. If you're in shape, run more. If you do this, do more. And just being a good influence in there and making sure these guys understand as soon as they get into the league, like, okay, this is your job now, right? One good point that was made I was listening to a show is the other thing too is these guys come in here and your first year in the NFL, it gets kind of hard because they're used to being done playing football by December.
Yeah.
And you've got a whole nother month of football at that point. They talk about the rookie wall that some of these guys hit too. So, it's hard to project those things and say, hey, let's go after like a Will Lee. He looks
Yeah.
like something, but are they, there's always some risk that goes in with it too. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, the second round. It could be a 4th and 5th rounder, but this is an interesting draft because I think Goody does need to get some of these things right, more so than not, and more so this year than in past years to keep that competitiveness for the championship and the Super Bowl contention alive.
Right. And you know the about the age stuff, we are in the last year or two of the COVID eligibilities and stuff like that. So we are still going to be dealing with a lot of older guys, and then you've got to remember with the NIL, some of these guys are wanting to stay in college because they're making guaranteed money with the NIL, whereas in the NFL, if I'm 52 out of 53 on the roster, am I making the same as if I was the number one on the roster for this college team? So there's going to be some of those issues too. And the Packers have went off course a little bit. I mean, they did take Devontae Wyatt in the first round, and he was 24 when they drafted him. They took Elton Jenkins in the second round, and he was 24 when they drafted him. So they do kind of go after that once in a while. But like Mike is known to say that as long as you tick off the boxes for 4 out of 5 things, then the Packers are okay with not hitting 5 out of 4, 5
Sure.
out of 5.
Right.
So as long as you're hitting 90% on it, then they can be all right with it. But are there any other guys that you really maybe well, I can't say day 2 because we are in day 2 because that's when the Packers start drafting. So anybody maybe day 3-ish that you kind of looked at that you think could be interesting?
So this is where I lean on our draft nerds, right? Our boy Mafi, Brian,
Yeah,
who does this all the time and looks for these guys. I'm going to give some more pub to my good friend. You've mentioned him already, Jake Westendorf with SI.
yeah,
He did his 7-round mock, and one of the corners that he had mocked to Green Bay was a 7th rounder out of Texas Tech, Dante Belfour,
okay,
and that's with pick 254. I mean, when I look at these names and these guys doing the work and putting in the work, Justice Mosqueda is another great one. You listen to him talk, and I mean, most of his guys he's going to want Oregon guys, right?
right,
But I do think that those diamonds in the rough and the later round defensive backs, one thing, if they're going to make the roster, they're going to play on special teams. So
yeah,
I'd like to think that one of the additional qualifications this year for you being a draftee to the Green Bay Packers, especially given how their special teams have performed over the past insert number of years, is you're going to have to play special teams and you're going to have to be kind of good at it.
For sure. And, I know all of us were kind of hoping there would be a changeover in special teams coaching, but that hasn't happened as of yet. Well, kind of. They did lose their top assistant for special teams, but that doesn't matter when your head guy isn't doing good things for special teams. But yeah, they're going to have to be more known for special teams. And that's the one thing that's hard about college, is because in college you've got 100 guys on your roster. So you can throw anybody in the world out there on special teams and then just concentrate. You basically got 11 on your starter, your offense, 11 on your defense, and then you got another 11 that'll play your special team. So a lot of these guys, when they come in to the league, have no special teams experience. So it's a wake up call for them. But, I've got a few other guys like TJ Hall from Iowa. Again, you got to be careful with the Iowa guys just because of how they're zone, they're more zone and they struggle with going to man. But I think he may have more of a more athletic traits that would help him out a little bit more. I was just asking one in another draft chat, and of course, Mafi had to pipe in on it. There's Jalen, and I'm not even going to be able to pronounce this guy's last name. Galabo out of Texas. It's where is it? Guilbeau. I thought he was, when I watched him, I thought he was really good. He set low on his back pedal. He tracked well. Speed looks pretty good. He was a little bit stiff in his transition and that, but I thought he was pretty good. But then Mafi chimed in day 3 nickel. It's like, shut up, Mafi. And
Yeah.
but there's Domani Jackson out of Alabama looked pretty good. Devontae Smith out of Notre Dame, I think could be a late round steal. Then you got the two Ohio State guys, Jermaine Matthews and Davison Igbenogsoon. Another name that I'm not going to be, I'm going to butcher.
That guy, right? Yeah.
I know Shavank and Leahy both call him IGB, so we'll just stick with IGB for now. They kind of both love him as a possible second round, third round guy, maybe fall fourth. Devontae Smith out of Notre Dame. Notre Dame does pretty good with producing secondary guys in the NFL, and I think he could be pretty solid. And then we could say Devontae Smith is on the Packers, and it's spelled the same way as the guy from the Eagles.
Yeah, Devontae Smith on Devontae Smith.
That would work.
A chance to go to the Super Bowl. 4th down, game on the line. Smith on Smith,
and Smith is going to come down with the ball one way or the other. So
that's right.
DJ McKinney out of Colorado could be another guy that could be another late round guy that would be pretty. I kind of like the Colorado ones, and I like the idea of them just because you have Dion out there, and you know how Dion is going to know how to handle defensive backs. So I think there's 3 of them that are draft eligible this year, so there's a chance that one of them could make it big. But I'm kind of on the opposite boats on as you are. You said sign 2, draft 1. I think it's sign 1, draft 2, and I would be good with it, depending on what other moves are made. If they do trade Keyshawn or cut Keyshawn, then obviously they're going to have to bring somebody else, 1 or 2 guys in free agency to replace that. If they cut Carrington, they're going to have to bring in another guy, because at that point you're looking at 2, possibly 3 people on the roster for that position, even going into free agency. So there could be a world where they have to sign 2 and draft 2.
That could. I think for me, it was if they signed Diggs, I almost think Diggs is kind of almost like a given. So he wouldn't necessarily count, where they might want to get a second guy and then they draft one. It looks kind of like what they did in 2019 with Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, and then they drafted Rashawn Gary.
right, and or the safety year where they signed uh, Xavier, and then drafted Javon, Evan, and
Yep.
Catan. So it could be something like that. But again, I go back to my one drawback is the lack of draft capital and higher picks. And again, I'm not poo pooing the Parsons trade. I would do the
Right.
trade every damn day, you know, of the week, and I'd be happy with it. But that does limit some of the things that you can do, because we could be sitting here on first night of the draft and it comes to the pick that the Packers traded to Dallas, and friggin' the kid from LSU is sitting there.
Sure.
And you're like, okay, well, if we would have had that first round pick, we would have had this guy that could be an instant starter for this team.
Right.
So that could happen. Not saying it is going to happen, but and again, I'm not going to say, well, I'd rather have this rookie that we don't know than Micah Parsons that we do know. I'm just saying that without that draft capital, it's a little bit harder to settle on things, because there are going to be a lot of holes for this team going into the 2026 season.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There are, and they're going to have to, and I think a lot of those can get solved with health.
Right.
But at the corner position, that's one where they need. Listen, this you're not getting by. And I think we all knew that if the Packers were going to go deep in the playoffs and they were going to somehow survive with Nate Hobbs, Keyshawn Nixon, and Carrington Valentine at corner, that the football gods were really looking out for them. Well, it turns out the football gods were not looking out for them at all.
Right. It
And
would have been
everything just
different had Parsons stayed healthy and Rashawn decided that he wanted to play instead of jog around on the field and shit
yeah.
like that. But because just looking ahead, holes on the team that they're going to have to fill: tight end, offensive line, defensive line, corner, special teams. That's why we are going to be talking special teams on our draft preview, because
Mm-hmm.
that is a big thing that needs to be looked at. McManus needs to be off this team like yesterday. Uh, if anybody's listened to us long enough, Mike and I have been anti-McManus since before he signed with the Packers. And so there's going to be a need looking at theirs. So there are a lot of holes and not very many picks to fill those holes. So,
That's right.
all right. Well, is there anybody else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to mention, or anything that we hadn't touched on yet with the cornerback room? That, because I'm kind of interested to see what the new coaches can do, because there's a lot of specialists in the coaching staff. Again, Gannon is a corner specialist. Let's just look at it real quick. Packers coaching roster. They have Gannon and Ryan Downard. I don't think they have some of these guys official yet, because I know there was a couple other ones that they signed as to fill spots, because they've lost a few of them down to Miami with Hafley. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with how much it's going to change from Hafley, with him bringing a successful defense back to Green Bay, to now he's gone, and see what Gannon can do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're gonna need a boost and elevate and jump up there. I mean, obviously that's going to be a big part of them coming through, and they can't punt on the position again. Cornerback is going to have to be a very active. I mean, it may be the loudest position group that we see this offseason, and justifiably so. They essentially had to let it go and ignore it. Micah Robinson didn't even last a whole season on this team, and I'm wondering if maybe they miscalculated there and thought that he would clear waivers or that he wouldn't get signed off the practice squad. And lo and behold, now he's with the Tennessee Titans. So, that's it's a feather in their cap. They found a good talent, but then we got to hang on to them. And
Yeah,
they're not helpful. They're not helpful if they're not playing for the Green Bay Packers. So yeah, I think corner is going to be one of those positions that we'll see a pretty active offseason with, and however they do it, I expect bigger things this season, because that window is still open, and you don't want to keep shooting yourself in the foot because you didn't take care of one of the most premium positions on the field.
Right. And like I said earlier, there are cap aspects that are going to be slim and tight. So there are going to be some things that have to happen to make some room to get some guys in there. But it's all possible. There are going to be some roster movements that maybe people are going to be happy with, aren't going to be happy with. But we are going to be entering one of the interesting aspects for the Packers this year, because it's going to be how are they going to build going forward.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
Most
Jason.
definitely.
I think we're at an hour 15 right now. Um, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Why don't you go ahead? I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but go ahead and tell where the people where they can find you at and what you're up to.
Yeah, I'm on X/Twitter at Jason Perone, same handle over at Blue Sky Social. And actually, I have Iowa Joe to thank for my moving over to Blue Sky Social, because that was back when you had to have somebody for you to get you onto the platform. So
Yeah,
I am over on
and it
Blue.
is getting to be a better platform over there
Yeah,
too. A lot more people are making the move. So
making the move over. Yeah, I haven't been as active over there, but I am over there. And then you can also listen to or find my work on the Thursday edition of the Pack a Day podcast, myself and Mark Eckel. During the season, we typically break down the Packers defense against the opponent's offense. But this offseason, all of the all the barriers are removed. So you'll hear us talk about all kinds of different stuff. We're on the Thursday edition, so come check that out. Joe, as always, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to come back. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of nice just the two of us here. I feel like I love me some Kawano, but this was a nice chat. I'm glad I was able to fill in for a little bit.
I love Kawado to death, but if we would have had him on here, we'd probably be here for another hour and a half.
We'd only be a third of the way through our content. Correct. Yes, exactly.
No, Kawano's great. Jason, as always, it's great to have you on here. I know we need to get you on more often, but just trying to get everything scheduled, because I know you've got an active life outside of podcasting, and your kids are into all kinds of sports and stuff like that.
Yep.
So getting you on is awesome. Getting you on is always great. We always have great conversations. So go over, give him a listen, give him a follow on everything that he's on. Support the man. Maybe convince him to come over to the dark side and join us and start a show over here at some point. Um, you know, but with that being said, you can find us on all the socials. Ohana Packers on Twitter, Ohana Packers Edition on Insta, Facebook. Do go over to Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. We're not as active over there, but we're trying to get to at least that 100 mark. So when we do our live streams, we can stream over at Facebook, because they do have that restriction. You have to have 100 followers over there.
Yeah.
Once we hit 100 followers, we are doing a giveaway. I keep forgetting to post the video of all the stuff that we have going on in the giveaway, but there's a lot of goodies from Hawaii in the gift basket. I've got a lot of good stuff in there that you can check out. My allergies are going nuts. Now my eyes are watering.
It's the dogs. It's the dogs.
It's the dogs. But yeah, go follow us on everything. Episodes come out every Monday. Next week we are talking tight ends, and I know it's another guy that I can't pronounce his last name, so be on the lookout for that. But Mike should be back for that one. He did confirm that today with me, unless something happens. So be prepared for longer episodes when Mike comes back. But as he would say, go Pack Go and aloha.